Hey everybody, it's your favorite reconstructionists, Eric Brown and Phil Relly, and welcome to episode number 7 of the one and only show bringing you tips and tricks to working vehicle collision cases from the best experts in the industry every Wednesday. Today's topic is, it's only crazy to talk to your car if your car doesn't talk back. So grab your Expert Angle coffee mug and settle in. 3, 2, 1, off we go. Every year, traffic crashes claim the lives of over 1 million people and account for over $500 billion of injuries around the world. A small select group of people, from police to attorneys to expert investigators, are tasked with getting justice for the victims, protecting the rights of involved parties, and ensuring the story is told accurately and honestly. Unfortunately, we believe that is an impossible task without the right team of experts. If you agree, then keep on listening for actionable tips from leading experts across various industries that you can start taking today to elevate your professional game. If you disagree, then tune in anyway and let us convince you with our ideas. We are Eric Brown and Phil Relly, and this is Crash Tech, the Expert Angle. Welcome back to the show, guys. Crash Tech, the Expert Angle podcast is brought to you by Crash Tech Reconstruction Services. If you have an accident that you need answers for, or you think the other side has it wrong, Crash Tech can help. Connect with us at www.crashtechreconstruction.com to submit your case for a free review. Phil, episode number 7.
Yeah.
And so I think the title is great because as everybody's driving to work this morning, listening to the podcast, they're going to start talking to their cars, right?
Or they're going to wonder how you got out of the white suit that had your arms strapped together.
Hush. Who
let him out?
That's me running across the lawn in front of the hospital. Whee! No, but you know, it always shocks me to find out that a lot of people either don't realize that cars are equipped with the technology to record some of the things going on inside the vehicle, aka a black box. All right. And before any of the other experts send me hate mail, I know it's not called a black box. That's why I said AKA the black box. Okay. And we'll explain a little bit about that here in a second. Right. But a lot of people don't even know that your car is equipped with it, let alone what it can do for you, the importance of it, why we should save it, why we should try and download it. But then on top of that also, are there some limitations and things like that? So
I think there's also the fear.
Yeah, the fear of what's actually going to show up in there.
I think when anytime people are, well, we don't want to download it, or, well, we don't want to go after that evidence, or, well, we don't want it, they're trying to hide from something.
Yeah.
They know they've had that conversation with their client, and their client was, well, it's a 60 mile an hour. I might have been doing 75. And
right.
They just don't want that. So they're hoping the insurance company settles the claim on the car, title signed over, it gets to the crush yard as quickly as possible, and the evidence is forever lost.
Yep. Yeah. So let's dive in and talk to you guys about what this is. So the CDR system inside of a car, right? Or CDR is just the acronym or the letters, abbreviation for crash data retrieval. That's all it is. Super easy. All right. Typically, the information that we are imaging, all right, because we're not actually downloading, because downloading actually means that you're taking something out of, okay, and you're not actually downloading the information. You're just imaging what's stored inside of the airbag control module. In some vehicles, other manufacturers call it a restraint control module. Others call it the crash sensing module. There's engine control. There's all sorts of modules. All right. But the ones that we're specifically after are the ones inside of an airbag control module or restraint control module. Now, if you try and call a dealership or a mechanic shop and ask them if they can download it, they're going to tell you yes. Okay. Almost every shop that I've ever called says, yep, we can download that because we have to be able to diagnose the airbag systems. They typically cannot get the system or the information that we can off of the vehicles. All right.
They're going after diagnostic information. We're not going after diagnostic.
Right. Exactly. We don't care. Well, I mean, we do care about the diagnostic information, but that's not our main purpose of what we're going after.
Right.
So these systems, just so you guys know, all right, are going to be available in most vehicles out there on the road today, because now the federal government has made a mandate that any vehicle sold in the United States has to be equipped with the ability to retrieve this information. Doesn't mean that it has to be able to be retrieved cheaply or efficiently.
Yeah.
Just that it has to be able to be retrieved. Yeah. So, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit in this episode. But all right, this system started with GM. So, as much as sometimes I'll throw some shade at some of the vehicle manufacturers, there is one thing I really have to hand to GM. That this all started with them, and it started back in vehicles from 1994. All right, so if you have a vehicle involved in a crash pre-1994, the chances of having this system in it are going to be extremely, extremely slim. You may find a one-off, but I was actually just on our site that we look up our vehicles through, and if I go to 93 or earlier, it just says no vehicles available. So, I don't know. I don't want to say that you won't find one, because the second I do say that, somebody's going to be like, I found one. So, I'll say the same thing that most doctors do. I'll just do the cop out. 99.9999% sure. All right. That it's going to be 1994 and above. All right. So it started out with just GM. So in the early years, your 94s, 95, stuff like that, Buick, Cadillac, Chevy, and Pontiac. That was it. That's all you got. All right. You start moving up into like your 98s, and you start actually gaining some other stuff. So now you're still with the GM line: Buick, Cadillac, Chevy, GM, Isuzu, Olds, Pontiac, Saturn, Suzuki. All right. Once you get up into the 2000s, all right. So at 2000, you're still running with just GMs. Let's jump up. I think it's 2003. I think you'll start seeing Fords. Yep. So there's some Fords starting to come in.
2001, you started seeing Fords.
Yeah. Yeah. In 01, 02, 03. You start seeing Ford come into it. Hummers in there, Lexus, Lincoln, Mercury, Toyota are all starting to get into it now. And jump forward now to 2020. If you get a new vehicle, right, everybody just keeps adding. So now Acura, Alfa Romeo, Audi, Bentley, BMW, which FYI, if you have a Bentley crash, please call me. I would like to take a look at that one. Cadillac, Chevy, Chrysler, Dodge, Freightliner, GMC, Hondas, Infinitis, Maseratis, Mazda, Mercedes, Minis, Nissan, Porsche, Ram, Rolls-Royce, Smart, Subaru, Teslas, Toyotas, Volkswagen. So as you can see, quite a lot of vehicles are supported. So the couple of vehicles that are still not on this list, though, through the main tool that everybody has, are still going to be your Kias are separate, and Hyundais are a separate kit. And those kits are by rental only, I believe now. I don't think you can even buy them.
I believe, yeah. I don't think that's
because every time that we've had to image either a Kia or a Hyundai, when we've reached out to the supplier of all these kits, they normally just have to have us rent a kit that we haven't even been able to buy one. So now on top of that, you can also download semis, but that is a whole different beast. All right. We are just focusing on passenger cars right now, and the CDR kit, and what it can do for your vehicles. So if you have a vehicle that is involved in a crash, the first thing that you should do, regardless, is call your friendly local reconstructionist, Crash Tech Reconstruction Services. Anyway, sorry, shameless plug. Who said that? Anyway, call your reconstructionist that you work with all the time, okay? And just ask them and say, hey, look, are any of these vehicles supported? That needs to be the first thing that you do, because, like Phil said, a lot of the insurance companies are going to do what?
Get rid of them.
Yeah, lickety split.
Settle the claim, because they're not in it to hold on to it. They, if they're holding on to it, it's holding up the claim. So somebody's either got to sign off on it, release it somehow or another. They want rid of that car because they got to move on to the next claim. Right,
exactly. And actually, so part of the conference I was just attending here with the Ohio Association of Justice, they were talking about bad faith claims and how it's actually, the insurance companies have to actually move these claims along. So, the insurance companies are just doing exactly what they're supposed to do. Now, might they know through doing an interview that maybe their client was exceeding the speed limit a little bit? Maybe they know that. And man, that information might not be good to come out, right? Now, I'm not accusing them of ever doing that, but I'm saying, could there be a possibility of that? Yeah, absolutely. Right. And so once that car goes to the auction yard's going to sell it for scrap. Some scrap yard is going to take it, and that car is going to be blown apart as quick as possible. And that information is gone forever. Gone forever. Okay.
Yeah, because I've only had one occurrence where I was able to track one down at a crushing yard in New York.
Yeah, and they like FedExed us
They sold me the airbag control module out of it as they're cutting the car into pieces.
Yeah.
Sold me that airbag control module and FedExed it to me. Yep.
Yeah. But if you can call your reconstructionist ASAP, I mean, the second somebody's like, hey, I've had a crash, okay, you need to be on the phone with your reconstructionist and say, hey, look, I got a potential new case. Are any of these cars supported? And just tell your reconstructionist the cars. They're going to just tell you yes or no. Yep, those are supported. No, they're not. Okay. Because even if you don't need a whole reconstruction, right, maybe all you're going to do is just litigate the case based on what your client is saying. And that's fine. But that data that's in the car is a relatively inexpensive thing to obtain. I guess depending on what company you're using. I don't want to speak for everybody. It might not be. It might be really expensive for some.
Might be that $12,000 bill again.
Yeah, right. If you were listening to our last episode. But yeah, you know, for the most part, it's relatively inexpensive. So if you could have unbiased information that's just electronic and stored on the vehicle that you could download and it verifies everything your client's saying, how valuable is that to you as an attorney?
Yeah. I mean, it could also be very hurtful, but you want to know about that now.
Yes. And
you want to know about this because that may change the scope of what you're looking at. Yeah.
So Phil, let me ask you this. If you're doing a defense case, all right, or a plaintiff's case, I guess it doesn't matter either way, right? And you are like, hey, you know what? Let's download this information. And our client says to you, oh man, I don't know. I think our guy, I don't know that I want to know what's on that module. Okay. If our client doesn't want to know what's on that module, what do you think the insurance company definitely wants to know? What's on that module? Mm-hmm. Like they're going to know. They're not stupid.
Especially right? A big policy limit case. That may make the difference.
Yeah. So at some point, that information is going to come out. Mm-hmm. Because at some point, discovery is going to get filed. Right? Because if everybody's doing their jobs, both on the defense side and the plaintiff side, right, we're going to get spoliation letters sent out and everything else. Right? So that car, as long as everybody's on top of their game, that car's not going anywhere. And once discovery starts getting filed, that information is going to come out.
Well, think about it too on maybe a different angle. So Eric crashes his vehicle and calls.
I promise I'm a good driver.
I've rode with him, folks. Eric crashes his vehicle, and regardless of fault here, contacts an attorney, crashes it on Friday, contacts an attorney on Monday, files his claim with his insurance company Friday night, what have you. And that attorney contacts a reconstruction company they've used, but they make the decision not to. We're not going to go after that data. We're not going to image that. We don't want to image Mr. Brown's truck. At some point down the road, the reconstructionist or engineer, whichever the case may be, is going to be sitting in some form or fashion answering questions to somebody who's going to probably ask the question, were you contacted regarding this case for reconstruction? Yes, I was. When were you contacted? On this date. When did the crash occur? On this date. So just a few days after you were contacted. Yeah. Is that vehicle supported? In other words, is the black box able to be imaged? Yep. Did you image it? Nope. Why?
Yep.
It's tactics. You know just as well as I do. I mean, I'm not revealing any secrets. All these attorneys know it. It's all about tactics.
Yeah. And look at the last couple of cases we've done. Actually, in the last couple of cases we've done, we've had the other side not download the car, and the car was not kept. It was sent to scrap yards and scrapped and gone forever. Right. So when you go into court, think about just picture this in your mind as an attorney, right? Being able to kind of go down this line of questioning, okay, in the courtroom in front of a jury. Imagine them hearing this, right? So you're standing there in the courtroom. I was going to say, close your eyes and picture this, but if you all are driving, listening to this podcast, That could be
We're
bad.
imaging your car.
Yeah. If you're driving, don't close your eyes. All right. Just imagine this.
Bad idea.
But so you're sitting there and so you get to go down that line of questioning, exactly like Phil said, So Mr. Brown, was that vehicle that the defendant was driving, was that supported and able to be downloaded? Yes, sir, it was. Did you make the request to download it? Yes, sir, I did. Okay. And what was the results of that request? They stated that the vehicle was gone and no longer able to be recovered. Okay. Did they make an effort to download it? No, they didn't. So there was evidence of the crash that could have provided a totally unbiased observation as to what happened, an unbiased record. There was that evidence inside that vehicle, and they made no attempt to even obtain it, preserve it, or download it. Is that what you're telling me? Yes, sir. That's exactly what I'm telling you. Like, think about that to a jury. Mm-hmm. And so if you're the one not downloading cars, guess what's going to come from the defense? How damaging would that be to your case? Could you imagine your expert that you've just spent thousands and thousands of dollars on sitting on the stand and the defense going down that exact line of questioning with your expert? Imagine that. Holy crap. Right? And so that's why I stress this. And so what's in this module that makes it so important? Phil, correct me if I'm wrong here, but we've got what? Some of these modules, and they do differ. So don't quote me on this, and this is not expected from every module. But
it's not an inclusive list in any way, shape, or form. Yeah,
it's not inclusive. And and at the same time, too, some modules don't record. There's different types of events. Some crashes don't even trigger the module to record. And unfortunately, you don't know until you plug into it. Right. Okay. But if it gets a good recording, it can include things like the vehicle speed for 5 to 8 seconds prior to a crash, the acceleration of the vehicle, were the brakes on or off,
brake switch.
Was the brake switch on or off? RPMs. Some of the newer cars are showing the steering wheel angle, so we can actually see, was the car swerving? Was it turning? Was it maneuvering? We can see all that stuff. It's going to show you the delta V, which if your expert is calculating speed, he can use that delta V to verify his calculated delta V, which is great. Okay. But also, as a lot of you know, the delta V is one of the things that we do consider when we're looking at the potential for injury. Okay. So it can give us a lot of this information. And so
other basic stuff about the vehicle in and of itself before it even got to the point of recording the event, assuming that the event that it recorded or documented or locked is the event that you're investigating. I mean, things about the condition of, ignition cycles, ignition at locked event, ignition cycles at download, and that's really important. I mean, it's good information to know. Seatbelt position.
Seat position. Seat position and seatbelt status.
And also,
some of them are giving you diagnostic codes.
Your seat, was your seat occupied? Was the passenger seat occupied or unoccupied? That may make a difference depending on what kind of a case you have.
Yeah. Think about some of the hit skip cases that we have, right? A lot of them now tell you the seat position. And so we've seen this where your client might be a female, right? And she's, 5'1", and we download that car and it shows the seat is in the extreme rear position. And when we get in there and we put that seat in that position and we measure it, there's no way a 5'1" female could even reach the pedals.
Or even if you get you get a case where
boyfriend
who was driving case and you download it and it says the passenger seat, the right front passenger seat was unoccupied. In other words, there wasn't enough weight being pushed onto that seat bottom to register that someone was sitting there, but yet the seat belt is showing, fastened, or buckled. That'll tell you quite a bit of information that's interesting.
Yeah.
So is this a car where they just they buckle the seatbelt so that they don't have to listen to the dinging go down the road, but they don't wear the seatbelt? So now that might be something you're taking into consideration when it comes to injuries. I mean, it helps a lot. I mean, first you have to obviously establish that the data that you've imaged is relevant or is the data from the event that you're looking at? I mean, that's
well, and so that's exactly what I kind of wanted to talk to, or the point I wanted to talk about next, right? Is make sure that, one, that you have the data collected, but then the data has to be analyzed, and it has to be analyzed with somebody that not only has some experience doing this and some training, or vice versa, not only has some training, but also has experience downloading this data and looking at these reports. Because a lot of times the event is not from the crash. So that's one thing that your investigator has to be able to determine is the event that we're actually looking at that was recorded, is it from the crash that we're here about today? He has to be able to determine that. And also, to look at it and say, okay, does it pass the reasonable test or not? Because, a lot of the speeds on the vehicle speeds just come from voltage into the vehicle, right? And so we've seen this where you have a voltage spike because of the crash. So it's a power surge through the vehicle. And we've seen it where it's recorded 2,000 miles an hour, 600 miles an hour, things like that. And you're like, okay, there's no way. Right. And so that kind of brings about my next point too, is make sure that the information that you're looking at is accurate. Because Phil, can computers ever have a problem or malfunction?
You're seriously asking me that question.
Now,
Absolutely.
So think about this, right? Just as an attorney, I guarantee you guys spend enough time on your computers. This at some point your computer has malfunctioned, right? And so now, leave your computer in a car for 15 years with all the temperature changes, the heat, the cold, all of that. Okay. Leave all of those sensors in there and everything else, the constant vibration inside of a vehicle, all that. Is there a potential that there could be corrupt data on there? Yeah, definitely.
The other thing too is, and I'm not trying to imply that this was the message that was being sent, but I want to make sure I get it out there. The CDR, EDR, ACM data is not the investigation.
Correct.
It's a validation tool of your expert's own investigation. In other words, if your expert has went out and did everything else, they worked from their scale drawing and they did their momentum, if they did the momentum and energy, whatever they did, speed or what have you, and they come up with their final numbers, it's a means of validating their work. So if they're calculating, let's say, a 60 mile an hour speed at the onset of braking or onset of evidence of braking, and then you pull you bring your report from the airbag control module into the play, and you look at it, and it's got numbers that are way, way, way substantially different and in no way, shape, or form line up with your collision event. That should be the sign right there that either the mathematical analysis, something went wrong, or the data is not for this event.
Yeah.
Because not every ACM is going to give you ignition cycle. So, if you have ignition cycle at deployment event or non-deployment event, ignition cycle at download, and they're relatively close, it's probably the event you're looking at. But if it's not there, there's a good possibility it's not.
Yeah. And actually, I was going to ask you that. So, because I've had it, and I'm 99.99% sure you've called me about this specific problem. So I think you've had it too, have you ever calculated a speed, then you open the CDR file and the speeds are different?
I've had that. And I've also had the other side, not necessarily an expert per se, present me a PDF document from an airbag control module that was imaged and said this individual was speeding it, right before the crash. Based on what?
Yeah.
Well, I imaged the airbag module. Congratulations.
Right.
You gave me a PDF document that is not validated.
Right.
Do your work.
Yeah. And that's it. Because if you calculate a speed and you have a CDR speed and they're different, which one do you trust?
Which one would I trust?
Yeah.
I'm probably going to trust. I'm going to go back and review. If I have differences, if there's substantial differences,
right? But you've reviewed them, and they constantly is working out the same. Which one do you trust?
I'm trusting my hand.
So do I, all day. I'll use my math all day long over that CDR. Because I'm telling you, the CDR has the potential to be wrong. And here's the other thing too. And this is a very easily explained thing. And I'm going to give you guys a secret right now. So if you have followed this whole podcast today, you're going to get a little secret that you can implement today, tomorrow, whenever, if you are questioning another expert about their CDR data. Okay, here you go. How often does the CDR data, or how often does the CDR tool get updated, the software? Easily 4 times every 6 months. Probably, I bet 6 to 8 times a year. Easily, it gets updated, right?
Why is it updated? It's not just adding new vehicles necessarily.
Exactly.
It's a computer.
Yes, exactly.
It's imaging another computer.
Yep. And so that's the question that you have to ask, right? That has to be the follow-up question. So you ask them that. How often does the CDR software get updated? Well, a couple times a year. Okay. What's the purpose for a software update? And they're going to try and play that off. And they're going to say just that, right? They're going to say, oh, just to add vehicles. Is that the only thing it did? Are you sure? As the expert, you're sitting here today, you're telling me you're 100% positive that if I pull the data from every single software update, the only thing it's going to show is that vehicles were added, right? There's not an expert in the world that's going to say, yep, I guarantee that's all it is, right? Because I guarantee in one of those, you're going to see one that says fixed bug for blah, 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 blah. Okay. So if it's being updated 6 to 8 times a year to fix bugs and errors, that's telling you the system isn't perfect, right?
Right.
And so how do we know that your case, this one instance, isn't one of those bugs?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Your expert should always be doing their investigation, whether they're doing it by hand math, sitting down with their tablet and beating up on their calculator, which is exactly what I do. And then I'll validate my calculations, obviously with a program. See, for everybody that doesn't have access to the video, you're going to miss out. I'm going to show you guys the hottest thing that's ever been on this camera in the podcast right here. Yep, that's my calculator sitting right here next to the TV monitor. And there's Phil's calculator. Oh, man. It's getting a little steamy up in here. That's a nice calculator, man. Yeah. But no, I always do it by hand.
Yes.
And then I will double check to make sure I didn't fat finger something against a program. And then I'll bring if I've got EDR or ACM data, I'll bring that in and compare that.
Yep.
But oftentimes too many people image these airbag modules, and then that's the answer to all questions. And then the reconstruction or the investigation is brought into or formulated around that data because they trust it.
Right.
That's a flawed approach.
Yeah.
Is it reliable? A huge percentage of the time, absolutely it is. But it has to be validated first.
Yeah. And that's it. I'd say, out of the thousands, thousands and thousands of crashes that you and I have investigated, I've only come across erroneous data. Man, I could probably count on one hand.
Handful of times.
Yeah.
It is very reliable. It is very reliable.
Yep.
But the expert still has the responsibility, the due diligence of doing their work first and then validating. They use that CDR or ACM or EDR information to validate not only their work that they did, but the two complement one another. So if you've done your investigation, your reconstruction, maybe 2 or 3 different approaches, and you keep coming up with the same roundabout numbers, and that lines up very closely to your EDR data, you can very confidently say that these are, that this is what it is.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. Is the CDR data should be used to complement the investigation, not an investigation to support the CDR data.
Right.
Okay. So make sure you're watching that. And like I said, what we've given you today is not, if a proper investigation was done and the CDR data is complementing that, you probably don't want to go down that line of questioning that I just shared with you. But you do want to go down that line if you are sitting across from an expert that all they did was downloaded that data, gave it to the insurance company, gave it to the defense, gave it to another attorney, whoever, right? All they did was do that download and they just drew all their conclusions from that. Go on the attack, because there's nothing that they can say to back that data up. Nothing. Right. Yeah. So that's actually going to wrap this episode up, man. The time flew today.
By. Yeah.
Yeah. So final thoughts on CDR.
There's so much, and there's so much more, final thoughts for me. I mean, that's a bird's eye view or Reader's Digest version of, airbag control module. There's so much more that goes into it. And the validity of them and the trustworthiness and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, they are very reliable. They are very trustworthy. I encourage you, go after them. Don't be afraid of going after it. It's good information to have. And if that changes the course of your approach, okay, fine. You're going to change it anyway, because I guarantee you the other side, they may force you to change your approach as a result of, we have it. Why don't you,
Yeah. Yep, exactly. So final thoughts from me. I'm going to say, just reiterate exactly the same sentence that I just put out there to you guys just a minute ago, right? Is that the CDR data is there to support and complement the investigation. An investigation should never be tailored around the CDR data. So make sure that it is done properly every time, and make sure that you're getting this data, or at least seeing if the vehicles are downloadable, so you can at least send out a spoliation letter and save the vehicles. If you're not going to file right away, make sure that we're holding on to those vehicles. Well, everyone, that's going to wrap it up for the day. As always, jump over to Facebook and make sure you follow and join Crash Tech, the Expert Angle group. Also, if you want to leave us feedback, have an idea for a show, or would like to be on a future show, head over to Crash Tech expertangle.podbean.com and click the link on the right that says contact the show. The form will come up. Put anything that you want right in there. If you want more information on expert consulting services or training, visit us online at www.crashtechreconstruction.com. And finally, if you're a PI attorney, make sure you request to join the Crash Site Facebook group. Or if you're a defense attorney, make sure you request to join the Crash Site Defense Facebook group. Neither site contains any ads or spam. It's just a private community that brings experts from all different areas together with attorneys to collaborate or ask questions. So again, guys, thanks for tuning in. And remember, always leave your accident victims better off than you found them, because at the end of the day, everything we're doing is for them.